Welcome to Shocking History Photos, where the glamour fades and the truth steps into the spotlight. Old Hollywood gave us legends, Ben-Hur, the Wizard of Oz, and the stars who lit up the silver screen. But behind the glamour were secrets, dangerous affairs, deadly accidents, and cover-ups that shaped Hollywood forever. These rare photos and hidden stories reveal what old Hollywood was really like, and by the end, you may never see it the same way again. Today, movies are made fast. Actors choose their roles, directors pick their own stories, and producers fund them all. And if things go wrong, they can just walk away. But Hollywood didn't begin this way. Back in the early and mid-1900s, almost everything was controlled by one powerful force, the studios. They weren't just companies, they were kings. And if you wanted to be in movies, you had to play by their rules. The 5 biggest names were MGM, Paramount, Warner Brothers, 20th Century Fox, and RKO. They were called the Big Five. These studios didn't just make movies, they owned the stars, the theaters, and even the public image of Hollywood itself. And this is how they would do it. First, actors and actresses were bound by a contract called the option contract, which could last up to 7 years. According to this contract, every 6 months, the studio could choose to renew or drop the contract, but the performer had no such right. The studio could assign any role to the actor, change their name, control their public image, and even sue or extend contracts. Second, by controlling theaters and distribution. Studios didn't just make films, they owned huge chains of movie theaters across America. If a theater owner wanted to show a major film like Gone with the Wind, they were forced to also show a lineup of lesser films, even bad ones. This was called block booking, and it crushed independent studios and filmmakers. Third, by changing identities. In old Hollywood, actors and actresses weren't just cast, they were almost remade to make them stars. In doing so, studios would change their names, their ages, their looks, and even their life stories. Lucille LeSueur became Joan Crawford. Archibald Leach turned into Cary Grant. Frances Gumm was reshaped as Judy Garland. Norma Jean Mortensen became the eternal Marilyn Monroe. Fourth, by punishing hard. Now you might be thinking, why would actors just accept all this? Wouldn't they fight back? Go to court? Actually, many tried, but the studios had the power to crush them. If a star refused a role, spoke out, or caused any trouble, they didn't just get fired, they got suspended without pay. Studios could quietly blacklist them too, making sure no one else in town would hire them. Bette Davis, one of the bravest stars of her time, once sued Warner Brothers to fight this brutal system. But in the end, she lost the case. Olivia de Havilland also fought back and finally won a landmark case against Warner Brothers, but only after years of struggle. But when did these all-controlling studio systems finally break down? We'll talk about it at the end of this video. For now, there's still much about old Hollywood to know. Old Hollywood gave us some of the most unforgettable mystery movies like The Maltese Falcon, Double Indemnity, and The Big Sleep. But what if Hollywood itself was the biggest mystery of all? Behind all the glitz and glamour, there were fixers, the unsung heroes, or maybe the villains who made sure the stars' dirty secrets stayed hidden. Number 1. Eddie Mannix, the head of MGM's studio operations, was the master of cover-ups. If there was a scandal, he was there to clean it up. Take Clark Gable, for example. When Gable had an affair with Loretta Young that led to a pregnancy, Mannix went into full damage control mode. He arranged for Loretta to adopt her own child, a move that completely erased the scandal. But that's not all. When Jean Harlow's husband, Paul Byrne, tragically took his own life, MGM's image was on the line. Eddie spun the story, claiming it was an accident. And when TV's Superman, George Reeves, died under mysterious circumstances, Mannix was suspected of covering up the truth to protect his wife, Toni Mannix, who was involved with Reeves. Number 2. Howard Strickling, another MGM power player, had a reputation for silencing the truth. Take Wallace Beery, for instance. When Beery was accused of assaulting a 17-year-old girl, Strickling stepped in, paying off the family to make the whole thing go away. No headlines, no scandal. Judy Garland, a beloved star, was struggling with an amphetamine addiction. Instead of helping her, Strickling covered it up. He fed the media the story that Judy was exhausted and staged rehab trips, all to protect the MGM image. He even helped hide Greta Garbo's reclusive lifestyle and secret love affairs, preserving her mysterious persona. Number 3. Fred Otash. He wasn't just any private investigator, he was a fixer. He was paid to dig into the lives of stars and keep their secrets buried. When Marilyn Monroe had affairs with some of the most powerful men in the world, Including JFK, Otash recorded every conversation. The tapes were either sold to studios or buried deep to keep Hollywood's perfect image intact. Frank Sinatra, known for his volatile relationships, was also helped by Otash. The rumors about his mob ties and chaotic love life were kept under wraps by Fred's manipulations. But the most chilling, Otash allegedly tampered with evidence surrounding Natalie Wood's mysterious drowning in 1981. What did he find? What was hidden? We may never know. And finally, the Cleaners. They were Hollywood's underworld, a group of thugs, including big names we just talked about. They worked behind the scenes to intimidate and silence anyone who dared expose the truth. Errol Flynn, the Hollywood heartthrob, was accused of statutory rape by several underage girls. The Cleaners were hired to intimidate the victims into silence, making sure no scandal touched Flynn's career. Old Hollywood didn't just demand perfection, it demanded sacrifice. And sometimes that sacrifice left real scars or worse. Let's talk about some of the shocking real-life dangers actors faced behind those glamorous movie scenes. First up, Harold Lloyd. During a shoot for Haunted Spooks, he picked up what he thought was a harmless prop bomb. It exploded right in his hand, blowing off his thumb and index finger. He hid the injury for the rest of his life, wearing a fake glove, pretending he was whole, but he never really was. Then there was Lon Chaney, the man of 1,000 faces. To transform himself for films like The Hunchback of Notre Dame and The Phantom of the Opera, he wired his own eyes open, glued painful adhesives to his skin, and breathed in clouds of asbestos dust. His body broke down slowly, and by the time the world hailed his genius, it had already cost him his life. And what happened to Margaret Hamilton during The Wizard of Oz? She was supposed to vanish in a puff of smoke. Instead, the fire erupted early, trapping her in real flames. She suffered third-degree burns on her face and hands, scars that stayed with her forever, long after the cameras stopped rolling. And Jean Harlow, the original Platinum Blonde. Just days after her husband's suicide, the studio forced her back on set with a fake smile. She collapsed while filming Saratoga and never made it back. She died at 26. Her final scenes finished with a body double because Hollywood had no time to mourn her. Now, it wasn't just one actor risking everything on set. Sometimes whole casts were thrown into danger, all for the sake of a perfect scene. Take Noah's Ark. To film the Great Flood, they unleashed thousands of gallons of water on the extras. It wasn't special effects, it was real. 3 people drowned, 1 man lost a leg, dozens more were crushed and swept away, all just for a few seconds of authentic footage. Then there's Hell's Angels. It wasn't a movie about war, it was a war. 3 stunt pilots and a mechanic died trying to film risky dogfights in the air. The bodies were removed and the cameras kept rolling. Ben-Hur gave the world that famous chariot race, but behind the glory there was tragedy. Several horses died on set. 1 stuntman was thrown under a chariot and killed. And yes, they still used that footage in the final movie. And finally, the charge of the Light Brigade, which pushed cruelty even further. To capture realistic cavalry crashes, they strung wires across the battlefield to trip galloping horses. Dozens of horses were killed or crippled. It was only after horrors like these that Hollywood was finally forced to face itself. Public outrage grew so loud, they had no choice but to start making real safety rules. We'll come on that too, but for now, we have to reveal some more shocking stories of old Hollywood. The way studios controlled actors' lives was even worse than you can imagine. For one, the work hours were grueling. Imagine working 18-hour days, 6 days a week, without any break. This was the norm, not the exception. Stars like Clark Gable, who spoke of the endless grind, once said, "You were expected to work till you dropped, and you did." Young actresses were forced onto crash diets, sometimes surviving on just coffee, cigarettes, and a few bites of salad a day. Judy Garland, who was only 16 during The Wizard of Oz, revealed that MGM fed her pills. And it wasn't a choice. If they refused, they risked being suspended without pay or replaced altogether. Studios also controlled their relationships. If 2 stars fell in love but it didn't fit the studio's image, they were forced to break up. Even in moments of grief, stars had no control. When Jean Harlow's husband shot himself, MGM executives decided it was bad for her image, so they forced her back to work 5 days later. No therapy, no break, just lights, camera, action. And if a star ever became too difficult, too emotional, or too overweight, the studios had a long line of fresh faces ready to replace them. Fame in old Hollywood wasn't just about walking into a studio and becoming a star. It was about giving up your freedom to the highest bidder. Imagine being a beautiful, talented star like Lana Turner. You're adored by millions, but every aspect of your life is controlled by the studio. They pick your boyfriends, make sure you never step out of line, and sweep your scandals under the rug. When Lana Turner was caught in a love affair that became a public spectacle, her studio kept it all secret. Jean Harlow. MGM stopped Jean Harlow from marrying the love of her life, William Powell, because they believed marriage would ruin her sex appeal. Harlow was heartbroken, and she died at just 26, never able to live life on her own terms. Judy Garland became a symbol of youthful innocence and incredible talent with The Wizard of Oz, but behind the scenes, her life was a nightmare. The studio not only controlled her career, but also her very existence. Garland was placed on a strict diet and forced to take pills to stay thin and energetic. She was only 16 when she was told she needed to lose weight, and they pushed her to take dangerous medications to control her appetite and keep her working long hours. But it wasn't just the women. Men like Marlon Brando, too, were pushed into molds that the studios thought would make them stars. Brando, who was known for his rebellious spirit, often clashed with the studio bosses. They tried to shape him into the perfect leading man, but Brando would rebel against the image they forced him into. These stories were often swept under the rug, and in their place, the studios built up the myth of the perfect Hollywood star. And yet, despite everything, many of them still longed for a life where they could just be themselves, free from the suffocating weight of their fame. In old Hollywood, childhood was often sacrificed on the altar of fame. Stars like Shirley Temple, Jackie Coogan, Judy Garland, and Scotty Beckett were adored by millions, but behind the scenes, their lives were tightly controlled by studios and managers. Shirley Temple began acting at just 3 years old, quickly becoming the biggest box office draw of the 1930s. Her days were filled with grueling rehearsals, publicity events, and studio demands. There was little time for play or school. Shirley later revealed she was subjected to inappropriate advances and manipulation by powerful men in the industry. Her childhood was so controlled that she retired from acting as a teen. Jackie Coogan was made famous by Charlie Chaplin's The Kid. He saw his fortune vanish after years of work, as his parents spent almost all his earnings. His legal battle led to the creation of the Coogan Law to protect future child actors, but it came too late to save his childhood. Judy Garland, beloved for The Wizard of Oz, was pushed by studio executives to take pills to control her weight and energy. She was treated more like a product than a child, leading to lifelong struggles with addiction and self-worth. Scotty Beckett, another child star of the 1930s, faced a tragic decline into addiction and crime after the pressures of early fame became too much. And finally, Bobby Driscoll, Disney's original Peter Pan. He was celebrated as a child, but discarded as soon as he hit puberty. Suddenly dropped by the studio, he was bullied at school and spiraled into drug addiction. He died alone at 31 and was buried in an unmarked grave. His identity was unknown for years. His mother searched for him, only to discover the truth long after his death. For these young stars, the spotlight was bright, but it came at the cost of innocence, happiness, and sometimes their own lives. Judy Garland was the star of The Wizard of Oz, a childhood icon loved by millions. At her peak, she was the queen of Hollywood musicals, but fame came at a heavy price. By the time she died at just 47, Judy's body was broken by years of addiction and pressure. In the end, the studio system chewed her up and left nothing behind but a legend. Jean Harlow, Hollywood's original blonde bombshell, was at the height of her fame when suddenly she collapsed during filming and never made it past 26. She had been working non-stop to maintain her star status, and the toll was too much. Jean's death was shocking, and Hollywood never recovered. Veronica Lake was the face of 1940s glamour, a star admired for her beauty and screen presence. At the height of her fame, she was one of the biggest stars of noir films. But by the time she turned 50, Veronica was a forgotten name, working as a barmaid to survive. Barbara Lamar, known as the girl who was too beautiful, was one of the brightest stars of the silent film era. At her peak, she had everything: beauty, talent, and fame. But her life was full of heartbreak, excess, and addiction. At just 29, Barbara was gone, exhausted by the very things that had made her famous. James Dean was the embodiment of youth and rebellion. After starring in Rebel Without a Cause and East of Eden, he was on the verge of becoming one of the greatest actors of his time. But his life was cut short when he died in a car crash at just 24. Unfortunately, he could never live the full life his talent deserved. Thelma Todd was a rising comedy star with a bright future ahead of her, but at just 29, she was found dead in her car. The mystery surrounding her death only added to the tragedy. The woman who had made so many laughs was gone too soon, her life and career cut off in their prime. The world lost a great talent, and we're left wondering what could have been. Lupe Vélez was a fiery star, beloved for her passionate performances in the 1930s. But as her career faded, so did her spirit. By 36, Lupe was overwhelmed by heartbreak and scandal, and she ended her life tragically. Her death was a sad ending to a star who had once shined so brightly. Hollywood never truly understood her, and her story ended in heartache. John Gilbert was one of the biggest stars of the silent film era, known for his good looks and dramatic talent. But with the rise of talkies, John's career crumbled. Rejected by the industry and battling alcoholism, he died at just 38. From Hollywood's golden boy to a broken man, John's life ended in pain and obscurity. And finally, Marilyn Monroe. She was one of the most famous women in the world. At her peak, she was adored by all and became the symbol of beauty and sensuality. But behind the glamour, Marilyn struggled with loneliness, addiction, and self-doubt. At just 36, she died alone in her home. Despite her fame, she couldn't escape the pain that haunted her. The world lost its greatest icon too soon, and her death remains a haunting tragedy. This is what old Hollywood was really like. Beneath the beauty, there was control, danger, and heartbreak. If these rare photos changed how you see the golden age, hit like, subscribe, and ring the bell. And tell us in the comments, which moment shocked you the most?